Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you have found me. I'm just thankful you're here and that you have found me this week. We are on week 43 in our book, Queen of the Castle, 52 Weeks for the Uninspired, Domestically Challenged, or Just Plain Tired Homemaker. And our this week is on old-fashioned homemaking. Now, I recorded this whole segment earlier, but I'm using a camera that we've had for a long time. It's an old camera. It's a Kodak PixPro FZ43, and it does not have an option for me to see what's recording, so I recorded myself from here down. So quite funny. So I'm having to re-record this segment, this portion of it. Well, homemaking has changed a lot over the years, and I remember when I was first out. I was 17 years old. Was in the service, and I lived in a barracks where I did not have to worry about my food. There was a canteen where I was able to go and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so I really didn't need to worry about preparing food. And it was when I got out of the service that I had to start doing that. And I was pretty good with Hamburger Helper and all of that type of stuff, but I was not great at cooking from scratch. Well, my husband, we were dating at the time. We were both 17 when we started dating each other, and he was with his mom for a couple of years while he finished community college. And while I was in the service, I was thinking ahead. So Finger Hut would send me their wonderful magazines, and so then I went ahead and I made sure that I had the dishes and the pots that I needed for my future home with Benno, my husband Benno. And I remember things were sunflower, and I think the pots were amber visionware or something like that. They had cranberry, but I went with the amber because I had sunflowers. I was going to have sunflowers in my kitchen. And it's kind of funny because decades later, people still think sunflowers are my favorite flowers, and I do think they're beautiful, but roses, just in case you want to buy me anything, roses are my favorite. But I do love sunflowers. I love all flowers, but roses are definitely my favorite. But so I was going ahead and I was preparing a hope chest for myself. So when I got out of the service and I had my own apartment, I did cook for myself, but it was really basic stuff, and it was like Hamburger Helper type stuff. Nothing fancy. Very simple cook. Now, when my husband went away to state college, he had to learn to cook and clean and do all those things, and he did a great job and figured things out, and he had a fantastic teacher. His roommates were really good cooks, and so he learned some really great simple recipes that really take about the same amount of time as it took me to do my Hamburger Helper, and their food was so much tastier. Well, there came a point when we moved in together. We had a child out of wedlock, and things changed. And we had our own rooms, but it wasn't your typical homemaking that was the way it was 50 years ago. So things have changed quite a bit over the years, and homemaking looks different for every individual. And I think I felt that when we got married, our daughter was 2, that there was going to be this and I'm going to use an analogy that I heard at the women's retreat a couple weekends ago. When you've accepted Christ as your Savior, you kind of expect the spray tan of, all these spiritual gifts just to be. We just have patience and kindness and love, and, well, I don't know about you, but that didn't happen to me. And it didn't happen to me when we got married, and we decided that I was going to stay home. I wanted to stay home, and he was able to support that financially for us. So we had a budget, and I stayed home. But I'm going to tell you what, going from working full-time, where I would wake my daughter up, get her breakfast and dressed and ready for the day, took her to daycare, dropped her off, someone else cared for her for 9 hours. Then I'd come pick her up. We'd go home, have dinner, wash up, play, and I'd tuck her in a bed. To now I'm her person for 8-9 hours by myself. And I'm telling you what, rude awakening, but oh my goodness, I loved it. She was just such a joy. I loved being a mom. I still love being a mom to adult children. I love it. And just learned so much, and just watching them, and as they're learning things. Anyway, I can go on and on. These are all things I'm sure that you're aware of, but it was wonderful to be able to be home. But again, it's like I thought there was going to be this spray tan of all of a sudden I was going to be able to cook from scratch and can whatever I wanted. But I kind of had to learn those things. So thankfully, we'd both kept our books from Cruise Foods in middle school. So 35 years later, we still have those books, and they have my husband's favorite biscuits in it, which is the baking soda biscuits that I think came out in the Betty Crocker cookbook in the 50s. I'm not even sure. Basic, easy stuff, and I have learned to cook and prepare yummy food since then. And not by my own accord, quite honestly. Lots of learning from other individuals, books, etc. And so it's just been a joy to glean from that. Well, homemaking has changed a lot over the years, and she goes on to share an experience where she had just cleaned up the kitchen and like an hour before and gone back in and out was littered with paper cups and paper plates. It leftovers from the pizza that people had made or had eaten that night, and she was frustrated. She had said, why didn't anyone ever clean up after themselves? Well, then she goes on to say how she's grumbling as she cleaned up, these messes and throwing things away, and then she kind of has this epiphany. She sits down and she's reading this book called Pioneer Woman by Joanna Stratton, and she's reading how this woman had to haul the family's cooking and drinking water from springs up to a mile away, and women who had meals for the families almost entirely from foods they could produce themselves, cornbread, corn grits, corn mush, corn pudding. Basically, she's picking the corn and doing the whole process to be able to provide it. And she has a better grasp on, wow, I really don't have it so hard. I'm going to bookend that with, when you have an expectation from your family, asking them to throw their garbage away is not a high expectation. We are not maids. We are not going from, so I'm kind of backpedaling here a second. So going from, if you're talking about the pioneer time here in the United States, where there was all of that, and even in other countries there still is that, where people are having to go to a well to get their good water. There was a time in our country when you had hired help to help with, or some families had hired help to help with cleaning or even child rearing and things of that nature, cooking. And we've mainly gone to a society of we do it all. Now some families do still hire help, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's if that's how their family works. But most of us, I think, we're doing it all, kind of a thing. But going back to asking your family to throw their paper goods away is not, it's totally acceptable to ask them to do that. Throwing their own trash away is not a big deal. They should be able to do that. If you leave that expectation that I'm going to always clean up after you, then that's going to be the expectation that they expect. And along that route, dishes, set an expectation, whether you want them to rinse it off or stick it by the sink so that you can get to it. That's not a big deal. Clearing the table when you're eating as a family, clearing the table as a family can continue those conversations. It's not work when you're finding joy in it, right? Well, have you ever found that you're without electricity, and are you prepared for it? Usually in our society that means no TV, no computer. We might not even have internet. But if we have candles, and if we have flashlights, it's kind of fun to hunker down and play games or have conversations or tell stories or sing songs or whatever it is. And that's kind of nice. It also helps us think about how our modern conveniences really can make our jobs easier. I am a believer in the more you have, the more work there is. The more farkles or knickknacks you have, the more dusting you have. The more carpet you have in your house, the more vacuuming you have. The more wood floor or tile you have in your house, the more sweeping and mopping you have. The more bathrooms you have, the more toilets to clean. And although those modern day conveniences are so nice, it can become cumbersome. So I just want to encourage you to be content with simplicity. And if you can't be content with simplicity, that's something that you need to be working on. If you're wanting something more, just realize the bigger picture. We are told that there is no great loss without some small gain, says Laura Ingalls Wilder in the book Little House in the Ozarks, The Rediscovered Writings. Even so, I think that there is no great gain without a little loss. We do not carry water from the spring anymore, which is a very great gain, but it was sometimes pleasant to loiter by the way, and that we miss a little. So just taking joy in those tasks and the ability to be out in nature, being able, now she's able to pour, get a glass of water from the sink. Before it was so much more work. Lynn goes on to say, maybe I shouldn't wait for a serendipitous power outage to bring my family a quiet island of peace. Maybe I should put together or gather up the candles and firewood some evening and pull the plug myself. We can enjoy an old-time weenie roast to the fireplace and listen to the peaceful quiet of a house that's gone to bed and is urging its human inhabitants to follow suit. Well, I know we are still in October, and next week our lesson is on planning ahead for a more relaxed Christmas. And I already know what we have going on for November and December. I kind of start that knowing here we are in the fall. I already start thinking about those types of things. Thankfully, I don't plan every holiday, but I do host Christmas for my husband's side of the family, or we host Christmas for my husband's side of the family, which isn't very large. So making sure that we have that in play where we're working on it. So, well, blessings to you and yours, and I just hope that between Lynn and myself that you've had a little bit of interesting ideas floating around that might help you in your walk as a homemaker, and lower those expectations. Sometimes they're way too high, and just know that when you can be relaxed in your home with what you have done, your family then can relax and enjoy and be at peace in that home. So blessings.